All right, Rob, I think we can agree. Whether we agree on some of the individual calls or not, we'll find out. But I do think we could both agree that the officiating in last night's game between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets was horrendous. You agree with that?
Yeah, it was all over the place. It just wasn't consistent.
Terrible. It was terrible. But here's how terrible I think it was, Rob. I think the referees cost the Nets the game. Now, look, I know the Nets are not on the same level
and
as the
they're not going to win the series, but they didn't. Right. I know what you're saying, but it still doesn't mean that they shouldn't have won that game.
Absolutely. Right. And here's why I say that. And I know a lot of people, and I've said this before, and this is right. Rob, something that happens at some point in the game, especially if there's a good amount of time left, it kind of evens out, right? It changes the circumstances. Players react differently. Coaches react differently. So you can't always just say, oh, if so-and-so hadn't been taken out, they would have won that game. You just never know. All right. But this was three things. And here's why I think they cost the Nets the game, Rob. Number one, I think Joel Embiid should have been ejected. Now, he's only their best player. He's only about to be the MVP, we think. I think, at least. He's only the best player in the series. So ejecting him or not ejecting him is a huge decision.
And Chris is talking about the kick on Nick Claxton.
Yes.
It wasn't
in the first quarter. It was early in the game.
Right. It wasn't a direct hit, Chris, to the private area, but it was intent. The intent was there, and I think he grazed him, right?
Yeah, he more than grazed him. He caught him, leg, thigh,
but not
buttocks, that area. Yeah, it wasn't like he didn't hurt him, but he did, and he kicked him hard, Rob. And that's a 7-foot, 300-pound man,
right?
So I thought he should have been ejected. He's the best player on the floor, so that's big. But Rob, not only does he not get ejected, but the guy that did get ejected, or one of them, Nick Claxton, was having the game of his life.
He's playing great.
You could argue he was outplaying Embiid last night. He had 18 points. I think that's a playoff high for him. Rob, he had a plus-minus of plus 13.
Wow.
Last night, he was the best net. And I know Mikal Bridges played a good game, too, scored a lot of points. And then, Rob, they ejected James Harden. Some people think, and I think it makes sense, that they kind of did that when
to make up because of the,
yes, because we didn't take out Embiid. Let's take out the other star. Here's the problem, and this was in the third quarter. Harden, Rob, despite scoring 21 points, despite shooting well, 8 for 15, was a minus 15.
Wow, when he was out there, that's crazy.
And then when he went out, they put the ball in Tyrese Maxey's hands, and he went berserk.
Yeah, I saw him knock down a couple of big threes, too.
I think he scored 10 points in clutch time, last 5 minutes. And here's the other thing about Claxton, Rob. Not only was he a plus 13, the Nets were leading 87-81 when he went out with about 8.5 minutes left. They were outscored 21-10 the rest of the way.
Yep, that was ball game.
So I think, again, I'm not, trying to tear the league down or anything like that. I do think Phillies would have won the series, but I think they cost the Nets that game last night. And, Rob, the series is over. I mean, even though we thought Philly was going to win anyway, at 2-1, the Nets got hope.
Right. It's over 3-0, and I'm with you on that. It was just, and then the Claxton thing, what was it, taunting, right? Is that what the
yeah,
and I'm just like,
I think they need to
be careful with that. The goal is not to take the stars out of the game, Chris.
Right.
I'm never going to be cool with that. I'm just
Rob,
not. If you swing in on people or there's something like that,
absolutely,
then you got to go. But you make a good play and you have some sort of animation or whatever, or you say something.
Thank you.
He didn't go in his face and point Chris or touch him.
No.
I just thought, wow. And I know remember he had the early technical. That's why he had the early technical.
And it's possible the ref didn't even know or forgot, right?
Because that was the other one, right? He had the one when him and Embiid got tangled up.
Yep.
And then
he
B
stepped
kicked
over.
at him, right.
But, Rob, we had women in the NCAA tournament doing "you can't feel me" or "you can't see me" signs
Right.
and put a ring on it. And I liked it. I mean, the only problem with it was that they treated the black girl differently than the white girl
Right.
on that. But overall, I'm fine with that. I think everybody was fine with that. Heck, the NCAA was using Caitlin Clark's, doing the "you can't see me" sign to promote the tournament.
And they had record numbers on television.
Right.
Record.
And Rob, how in the world can you have women in the NCAA tournament allowed to do all that stuff? And again, I'm fine with it. And the players in the NBA can't look at somebody? You can't dunk on somebody and stare at them? Remember when Sean Kemp dunked on, was it Alton Lister? And he pointed at him. It was like the Lister blister, whatever they called it.
Right.
And Lister was on the floor, ground, and he pointed at him and all. I mean, that's like a highlight now. You mentioned Pippen stepping on Ewing. I mean, did he get penalized for that?
No.
That was bad, but you
remember
he
that?
Stepped on him.
I mean, he stepped right in front of Ewing.
Right.
I remember that as like it was yesterday.
I think, Rob, I'm not saying totally eliminate the taunting rule, but I think the bar has to be much higher.
There's got to be judgment. You got to.
Yep.
It's always a judgment call, and you got to figure it out and say, do we really?
But they should tell them. Don't you think? Like, I don't mind a guy looking like I dunk on you, then I kind of look at you as I'm starting to go down the court. Like, yeah, I got you. Or what? Should a guy get a penalty for that? Yeah, boy, you can't handle this. Really?
Right.
You should get penalized for that? It's ridiculous. Like you said, if you're all up in his face for 5 to 5 seconds or whatever, or
yeah, like
stuff like that.
When people get out of hand, Chris, where it could escalate into a fight. Now that like something of that magnitude, but what I saw last night, it just didn't feel like that. It was shocking that he got tossed. Right?
And Rob, we've seen plenty of, I think, stuff that they call taunting that I think you should let go. You got to let the players show some emotion.
It's an emotional game.
Yep.
You're invested, Chris. Right?
Yep. That's a good thing.
If you were like, it didn't matter to you and you just kind of played and whatever, I mean, that would be boring.
Right.
People should be emotional about it. You're giving your all. You're trying to win. The whole competitive spirit. I mean, that's the juices that flow in the game.
Were you surprised, or did you think the league should do something today? A lot of people thought they might suspend Embiid or up. I do think they should have upped his foul to a flagrant two.
But they didn't do anything, right?
Right. And I thought they should have lowered Harden's to a flagrant 1.
But Harden has done that before, right? And then his MO trying to hit you in the...
Yeah, and again, I think it was a flagrant 1. I mean, this talk about, it wasn't even a foul. That's ridiculous. I mean, He clearly pushed the guy away. You can't do that. And
even in this league where they let stuff go.
Yeah. I mean, but this notion, Rob, that the league should have suspended Embiid like for Game 4, I thought that was ridiculous. Number one, Rob, it could be argued that would have been doing the Sixers a favor. Embiid's banged up. You saw him yesterday. He got up slowly several times. He got knocked down a lot.
He didn't have a good game either yesterday.
No, they might. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually sat him out. Just the Sixers. So I think you'd be doing him. The series is over at 3-0. They could easily sit him out and know they're going to win the series.
Right. They could and just be like.
So a suspension would have been, cool, thanks.
Right.
We don't have to load manage.
That's right. You give a referee load manage card.
Right. And beyond that, Rob, it's over. 2-1 is different than 3-0. Like, you can't make up for it. Sitting him out at 3-0, what's the point of that? So I didn't want a suspension, after the fact. A flagrant 2 would have been significant because he's got 2 points now, and he'd be closer to getting a suspension if he acts up again. So that's Rob. I think they cost him the game. It's a shame because the Nets, Now, do I know for a fact they would have won? No.
No, but you know, once you took out Claxton, they weren't going to win. How about that?
Right, and
Is
you
that
saw
fair?
they just got and they ran roughshod over them after that. 21 points in 8.5 minutes.
Right.
Without their best defender from
You always,
Brooklyn
as anything, in sports, you don't want it to be about the officials, like or the umpires or whatever it is. That's just not the best games are when you don't know anything about the officials, and that's not the conversation, Chris, the next day.
Right.
That's not what you want. You want the players to decide the games. That's what you want.
And I think that's one reason, Rob, the league didn't change the flagrant fouls today. I think they just want to move on. I think they're just like, look, it's been a bad week. Let's just get as far away from these things as we can. We're not going to win, the crowd over no matter what we do. So let's just move on. And I bet you, I think the league, like, I'm sure, Rob, I think there'll be a little, I don't think guys will be ejected as easily.
Going forward, yeah. Because of what's happened so far.
Yep. It's been bad. Now, it might only last a few weeks, right? A couple of weeks.
You just don't want the whole story to be about that. Right. I'm telling you, I get it. Yep. And you don't want the league where all these games and people aren't playing. That's just not what you want.
No, you got enough guys hurt already. You don't need to be suspending guys.